most people think that in order to start a business, you have to have free time and you do not have to have a job. And that is completely false. When I started my first business, which eventually ended up doing $15 million in revenue, I was working full time and I was going to college full time. So, and on top of that, I was a pretty good student, even though I did not care about college. I honestly was only going because, I was following the path that everybody else is following without actually thinking what I wanted to do after college or anything like that. I was just actually going there just to do it. And on top of that, I was a pretty good student. I had only A's and B's. So that means I actually had to do my homework. So when you think about it, I was doing a lot of work outside of the business, and I still had time to launch a business with my best friend at the time. Okay. So it's a huge myth when you think that you have to have freedom and a lot of free time to actually start the business, right? So when I first started, we were working a lot of the time. So I remember when I was going to college, it wasn't every single day that I was going to college, but the days that I was not going, I was going to work. So I remember, when I was starting this business with my friend, before college, I would get to the parking lot, I would sit in my car, I would handle all the customer um, calls that were coming in. After I got out of class, the first thing I did was get in my car, answer anybody that has called, any kind of problems, all of that stuff. That's when I would answer them before I even left the parking lot. If anything came up on the way, I would stop, park somewhere, handle the situation, or call my friend. If I was in class and I would see something that was urgent, I would text my friend who was probably at home at the time or free. I would be like, or my partner, I should say, who was my friend. I would be like, hey, there's this situation, you need to take care of it. I'm in class, I'll be out. And the same thing was happening when I was at work, right? So the nice part where I worked was that I had some actual freedom because my dad was the boss. So I would, something would come in, I would step outside and I would take care of the situation. But the entire time, you know, I was doing three things at once, and that's it. I was single at the time, so I didn't have any other responsibilities except go to college, go to work, make some money, and work on the business. And to fund the business, that's where it actually came from. It was from my work, right? When I first started working for my dad, I had $0, and eventually I saved up, about, it was between $5,000 to $10,000. I can't remember exactly, but that's how much I saved up. 3,000 of it went into starting the business. My friend put in another 3,000, so the total investment was about $6,000 at the time. And we started when I was 19, grew that to over $5 million in revenue by the time I turned 22. So it was 3 years. At that time, it shifted my mindset, taught me that things are possible and all of that good stuff. But before all that, I did not, just start a business, quit my job, quit college, all of that stuff. And my friend didn't either, right? He was still doing side stuff during this time to make money. And he was going to college, same college as me. So all of that, we didn't quit any of that until things started to happen. And when, profits started to come in and we didn't have enough time anymore, we were like, okay, we have to make a choice. So I was like, I quit my job first. Okay. Then I quit college after a few months. And, I remember I had a discussion with my parents. I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go to college, but they're also sold on this idea of going to college because everybody else was doing it. Everybody else is doing. So it was a hard no. So what I ended up doing is I just stopped going. I would pretend I'm going, right? I would go sit in my car at a park and work on the business. And that's basically what was happening until eventually they didn't even ask. They kind of figured that I wasn't going, but the business was already pretty successful, so there's nothing that they could say about it. Okay. And my friend, same thing. He quit everything a couple months after I did, and we just started working on the business non-stop, right? So if I have to give you my opinion, I think that you should continue having a job. And when you look at all the users that BookingKoala has, that is actually the path that is chosen. Okay, they do not quit right away. They focus on the business during their free time. And of course, it's hard. The first year is going to be always the hardest in anything that you do. You have a baby, you have, a business, anything is always going to be the hardest in the first year. Okay. Until you figure out what works, what doesn't, you gain some traction, you gain some momentum, and things start to happen. So again, when you start to look at things across all of our users, that's the common trend and the path. Okay. So again, you do not want to do that unless, you 100% want to do it. And if you already don't have a job but have good savings, or don't have college and you're single, you're living with your parents like I did, when I was 19, you're already ahead of the game. Starting a business is literally the best thing you can do because you don't have any responsibilities. You just have one thing to work on, and at that point you should be crushing the goals, right? And when you look back at what we accomplished, I remember our first full year in business, we almost did 1 million in revenue. Okay. With all that stuff happening, going to college, going and having a job, right? We were, I think, like 40 or $60,000 short. And then the next full year in business, we did over 2 million. So we more than doubled. And at that point, we were, solely focusing on the business. There's no college, there's no job. There was no time for that because we were literally working, I remember, from 7 till 7. And then from 7 till 7 was when we actually handled customers. And then after 7, and this was all day, every day, including Sundays. I don't remember exactly if we closed at 7 on Sundays or it was 5. I think we maybe at the beginning did 7 to 7 on the weekends, and then later lowered it to 5 across all days, because I remember we needed to focus on growth, and we needed to focus on hiring, putting in systems, things like that. And it just started to get, a little bit overwhelming, because we had to be there to answer customers 24/7. Basically, that's what it felt like when you were doing 7 to 7, and you didn't have enough time to actually start working on the processes and automations, the systems, as I like to call them, that actually help you grow your business, right? And help you achieve that freedom, which is the ultimate goal of a business owner. Okay. So now we're going to go on to the next point. What happens? Okay. When do you get the opportunity to quit? Okay. Your job, college, if that's what you want to do. Well, basically, when things start to happen where you're producing profits in your business, or you feel comfortable in doing so. Okay. And typically, that would be $5,000, in my opinion, in profit per month. Okay. That's the typical number. I can't remember exactly what we were doing, but I think we were a little bit past that, because at that point we were able to have some kind of income, and we didn't need a lot at the time because, like I said, we lived with our parents still. They paid for food, all of that good stuff. So all we had to do was just focus on the business and help it grow, which was our upside, right? That was the big upside for us, because we didn't have to take a lot of money out in order to pay bills. We could just reinvest it into the business and continue to grow it. And that's key in any business. You want to reinvest as much money as possible into a business so you could go ahead and grow as fast as possible. That's the key. Okay. And that's when things are going to start moving for you, because you get to start building automations. And just to give you an idea how important these things are, so if you know my story now, I'm co-founder of BookingKoala, which is a platform to help you start a business, and it's also a platform to even help existing business owners and their businesses, right? We give you the tools that help you save so much time, help you get clients, help you make more money, and things like that. And how did BookingKoala ever come to be? Okay, so if you know my story, originally that software is something that we were building for my cleaning company, right? And why were we building it? Because it was so hard to scale when you're doing a lot of cleanings and you're managing a lot of cleaners. You need to automate as much of your business as possible. Okay, and I don't remember exact numbers, but I remember when we completed our first version of the software, we were able to let go of several office employees, which saved us a lot of money throughout the year, right? Because if you let go of people, you don't have to pay as much, and that was only possible because of how much the software saved us time. And those are the things that we kept building for ourselves. We were trying to solve these things, using technology so that we can go ahead and scale faster and produce better results, right? That's what good technology can do for you. And um, you know, it was years later that BookingKoala was born, and during this time, which is sometimes I think about this, and people are like, well, how can BookingKoala be so good? Why do you pitch it? You're always saying how good it is, but when you think about this, it really is because I never started that software um, with the intention of selling it to anybody, right? I always tell people that if you're starting a business, you have to figure out how to be the best, okay? Because value and quality matters, right? When it comes to a cleaning company, you have to make sure that you provide the best service, right? And that's the whole package, the entire thing, the cleaners, the software, so the experience that your office employees will have, your VAs, you will have, your customers will have, whether they're booking, rescheduling, all of that stuff matters, right? So when we were building this software, that was literally to make our lives easier. It was years later until we thought that we're going to actually turn that into another business. So I knew that this thing was top notch when it was time to actually allow others to use it, and we turn that into a separate business, which today is BookingKoala, right? So this is why you have to understand that technology and systems will have a huge role into everything. It will allow you to quit your job. It will allow you to get out of college. It will allow you to later get to the point of freedom, because automating the cleanings, and this is not just cleanings, this is any service business or any business in general. You want to make sure that all of that stuff is automated. So for us, the cleanings were automated because we didn't do them. So that's, in my eyes, automation. You skip the part where you're actually performing the service and you're outsourcing it to everybody. That is the first layer of building a system in your business that's scalable. Because if you're the one doing the cleanings, the service, it will never be possible. You cap, right? You only cap at a certain level. So you have to already set things up from day one. Don't do the cleanings, right? Don't do the service, whether it's cutting the lawn, whether it's picking up the poop, for if you're a poop scooping business, doing the cleanings. That's the first level of automation, right? Passing that on to someone. Then it's setting up systems. All right. So if you're putting everything, and I'll give you another one. So at the very beginning, we were collecting cash and checks. Okay. This was a huge headache because we didn't have an office at the time. So we had to meet the cleaners every single week to collect all those all that cash and checks, right? Because at the time when you wanted to deposit into the bank account, there were problems. People couldn't do it. So you had to meet them, collect them. That took a whole day's work just driving around. It was, it was a nightmare. Sometimes I forget that we were even doing those things. But then eventually, when, we switched everything, we're like, okay, we're going to only collect credit cards. You pay that 3% fee or whatever it is, but you save yourself so much time and headaches and costs and other things, like gas to drive somewhere. And then eventually you would probably have to hire someone to collect this stuff. I mean, there's of course different ways to set things up. Everybody will come to your office later if you have one. But now, if you don't want to have an office and you're doing things remotely, then you run into the same problem. Okay. But eventually, when we started to do credit cards, that whole problem went away. So those are the systems that you have to put in place in order to scale. Because if you, for example, do this cash check thing and you have 7 of these things, now let's say Monday you collect the cash and check, Tuesday you do the other thing, Thursday Wednesday you do a third thing, and then so on. Your whole week is busy when this should literally take seconds. Okay. Later, what happens? Okay, cash, a person books with the credit card, nothing needs to be collected. It's charged automatically with the system. Later, payments are collected or calculated quickly inside the software, and you pay once per week or every day, however way you do it. Again, I like optimizing things where you don't have to, take a lot of time to do things. So paying once per week might be the best way, or once every other week, because again, it saves you even 5 minutes just to look over payroll, and that all adds up. So you want to automate as much stuff as possible so that later it's easier for your business to scale. Okay. And then the third layer in the business is going to actually be hiring people to help you pick up phone calls, hire other cleaners or providers, whatever, the service business that you're in. That's the third layer of automating things. And that's usually where you will go ahead and get VAs to help you, reach to that freedom part. And those are the 3 most important layers of getting out of, college, if that's what you want to do, quitting your job, getting to profits, and then eventually getting to freedom. And all 3 of those have to be met. So the first layer, which is, not doing the service yourself, automating stuff through systems like BookingKoala. And then third, replacing yourself with a VA or, some kind of staff member that's going to pick up phone calls and do the stuff that really burns you out over time, because you don't want to be picking up phone calls every single day from customers, from cleaners, things like that, because over time that will burn you out. You have to automate those things. And then what happens is maybe now you're working on the business once per week, maybe 3 hours per week, on the actual things that someone else can be handling. And then the rest of the week, you just focus on how to grow your business and make it better. Okay. And that is the key to the entire process. And if you guys want to exactly find out how I grew my cleaning company to over 15 million, the exact steps, there's a training below somewhere underneath this video. You guys can go ahead and enter it and watch the training and go from there. Okay. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you have any comments or topics that you want me to discuss, let me know. I'll try to do my best and include those videos.